The Harrison Bridge Show. Today, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce our first guest of the year, Jeff Whittingham. Jeff is here to share his journey and insights on how he's reached the top in energy. He has an impressive track record, having held multiple MD and CEO roles. In each of these positions, there's been a common theme of commercial growth and positive transformation. And having personally recruited Jeff for one of my clients, I can attest to some of his unique qualities and approach that sets him apart. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thank you very much, Lee, and thank you for inviting me. And also thank you to those people who put comments on the sort of LinkedIn post about this show and the kind comments that they said about me, which I really appreciated.
There were some very nice comments, Jeff. Yeah, good. I'm also joined by Kirsty Ames, who's emceeing the show. Hi, Kirsty.
Hello, Lee. Hello, everybody. It is me. I am emceeing, which means I'm going to be in charge of the comments, questions, and any things that you've got to say to the wonderful Jeff today. So as Lee said, we've got someone who's really quite impressive today on the show. So if you have any questions as we go through, please feel free to pop them in and I will bring them up to Jeff as we go through for him to answer.
Yep, cool.
Thanks, Kirsty. So, Jeff, many of our audience aspire to reach the heights of a CEO. What do you think were some of the key learns in your career that helped you land CEO roles?
Yeah, okay. So I am passionate about the energy industry. It's a wonderful industry to work for. You know, is it ever off the front page, really? I mean, it's all the time about energy prices. Sometimes it's a good thing for the energy industry. Sometimes it's criticism of the energy industry. But ultimately, I thoroughly enjoyed the whole sort of experience of energy. So the first thing is, I think you've got to be enthusiastic about the industry. You've got to want to learn. I think you've got to understand the business. You've got to understand the end-to-end business. You don't have to be an expert. I'm certainly not an expert in trading or risk management or marketing and sales, but I do believe I understand the process from end to end. So for me, you need to understand the sort of full end-to-end process of the business. I think you've got to define your leadership style as well. So you've got to understand, I've always, from a very early age, I've always enjoyed leading teams. It starts with sport, and I know it probably does with you, Lee, with your hockey. But for me, it was football, and I was the captain of the football team from as one of the youngest players, but I was the captain. I always wanted to lead, but I also took that as a responsibility, not a God-given right. And so you have to develop a leadership style, I think. And the other thing I've learned is that you need to work hard to look at how your team works together, but also the identification of talent. There's nothing like having talented people working for you. And one of my roles as a senior leader in an organization is to identify talent, to foster talent and make sure they get the exposure, but also to understand that I'm going to move that talent on, hopefully to a higher position. And I think I've got a number of examples in the energy industry where I've helped people on that journey who've actually gone further than I have, which I'm really proud of as well. So talent, they're the sort of three or four key learnings for me from my career to date.
Thanks, Jeff. And you are undoubtedly very passionate about energy. And I think what you've also been very good at in your career is you build a executive team that are very knowledgeable and experts in what they do, whether that be finance, operations, sales. And you know, the word, creating a family kind of culture has got perhaps negative connotations, but I don't know whether you agree with me, but I almost want to create that kind of high performance sports team culture, and that identity and ethos.
Yeah, but I guess, Lee, I mean, the other thing is I'm passionate about teamwork, but I'm also passionate about engagement and bringing people on the journey. I really strongly believe in any business that I've worked in, and probably I learned this at British Gas, who I thought were masters at this, is having a highly engaged workforce and people creates success because everybody's sort of going towards the same objective. It is team management, but I really like it. And I know when we're in a sweet spot. And the thing about engagement and bringing teams together, there's a time when it clicks and then suddenly it goes away again. You have to work really hard at keeping the team together. And when you refresh the team, it's a big risk because suddenly that family unit where we're all having fun together, which is also part of what I like, it's really important to sort of try and rebuild that. But second time and third time around, that's not an easy thing to do.
No, thanks, Jeff. So I recruited you for the Orsted Energy Sales MD role which was what, probably 10 years ago now, I think.
2014, yeah.
Yeah. So from my perspective, you stood out, Jeff, in several areas. So strategy and execution, your track record of building and growing businesses, your ability to get the right people in the right roles, which we've talked about, deep energy expertise. You're a very good communicator, which I think you need to have to get those CEO roles. So it's like not using 100 words when you could use 30. You're very good at relationship building. I could carry on blowing up smoke up your backside, on and on. What personal qualities do you believe are essential to be a successful CEO, especially in energy?
Yeah, I think one of the things is you've got to have principles and integrity. Okay, and if you like, as I've gone through my career, I've realised. Sorry if you can hear my dog barking, by the way. Right. Agreeing with you, Lee, on what you just said. I think you've got to have principles and integrity, and I've learned that more and more as I've gone through. So my job is to do, as far as I'm concerned, the best that I can for the business, and also one thing that comes with seniority, and you're paid more, is making difficult decisions and communicating difficult decisions. You have to be able to do it. And actually that's when you need to make sure that the decision that is being communicated is the correct decision for the business and is made on the right basis. So there is good sound rationale as to why you're having to announce, and I've had to announce the redundancy of a whole business. That's really difficult when it's like 225, 240 people who actually I wanted to stay in a job, because that's also part of my principles. I want everybody to be successful, but you have to do the right thing and you have to make sure you make the right decision. The other thing is, your word is your bond. Sometimes that's difficult, but I learned that from a very, very tough trading director who basically said, if you've made that decision, if it's wrong, don't you try and reverse it. That's the decision you've made. You stick with it and you live with the consequences. So I like to think my word is my bond. I said it already. I believe in the power of teams. And I want to use every ounce of energy and knowledge and ability to make the team successful and make it a business that can compete in the marketplace. That's another sort of key principle. And I've already said, talent is everything. If you find talented people, you can create success. I talked about earlier being an expert in the business or understanding the supply chain end to end. You don't have to understand everything. Actually, the people that work for you are supposed to make decisions. And so what I like to do, and I learned this from another sporting analogy, is to create an environment in which decisions can be made. So I want to make an environment for people where they feel it's not risk-free. It can never be risk-free, because it's never risk-free for me. It's never risk-free for them. But as long as they've taken all of the information in and made the decision against that information, so be it. I'll help them with that, and I'll also take the rap if it's wrong. So there's some of the things I think, there's some of the personal qualities I think you need to develop to be a CEO.
Thanks, Jeff. And so principles and integrity, not being afraid to make those difficult decisions based on a good rationale. Talent is everything. I mean, when I've got, my team are high performing, it makes your life so much easier. Yeah. And I think if you want to be a number one, a CEO, you've got to be a real positive change agent. It's not a steady state role, because most of us as shareholders want, growth, don't they?
Yeah, I just give you one example of something where, so in one of my jobs, two people caught me in the corridor and said, Jeff, we need to make this decision. We either do this or we either do that. What do you think? I said, why do you want to ask me? I don't know. I'm not an expert in that area. You are. Which decision do you think you should make? So I want people to make decisions. I also want people, and it's probably because I've worked in more new entrants, to make faster decisions. I want to speed the business up. This is one of the problems with some of the very big energy companies, that they can't move quickly. They can't take decisions quickly. That's a source of competitive advantage. In the businesses that I've run, people have said, well, they'll turn it around in half a day, whereas we can only turn it around in 6 weeks. Yeah. And so that's really critical.
Yes. Although they can actually move quickly, because COVID proved that, going from home working in a matter of 48 hours. So when it's forced upon them, they can do it.
Yeah.
We have had a couple of comments that I'd like to bring in, Lee, if I may. Ian said, when you were talking about this, you need to do what makes the boat go faster. And Kevin has said, that's true, but it also needs to be going in the right direction, and the boat needs to be of sturdy and sustainable construction, followed by a comment of the Titanic was fast, which is a great way of illustrating. I was just wondering what your thoughts on that were, Jeff, as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've just worked in a lot of businesses where there's not been a level of authority where people can actually make their own decisions. This was all part of the satisfaction of working in a company, and also, that some companies that I've joined will say, well, actually, we can't make that decision because it has to go to the CEO or the CFO or whatever. And it's like, well, have you got proper delegated authorities in place? Can you change that chain? And the last company I worked in, I immediately said, look, I'm afraid I'm going to have to take the senior management team down, reporting into us, down to a smaller number. I'm going to have a meeting on a Monday morning, and you're going to bring papers to that meeting recommending actions, and we'll just make the decisions. Okay. And actually, I'll probably go with your recommendation. So let's just get this place moving a bit quicker. And I'm not the guy who's going to make every decision in this business, because I'm not the expert. You're the expert. You make the decisions. So yeah, there are some risks of moving faster. But in my experience, if you're a new entrant and you want to beat the competition, you have to be fleet of foot. So when I join a business, I want to make sure that the sort of authorities and the sort of command and control structure is set up in a way to move the business quicker.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Jeff.
So, Jeff, what are your top 3 tips for securing a CEO role?
Okay, so I'll change that around to choices, I think, Lee, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So the first is, as you start your career, and you've all come across people, I'm sure, who say, I'm going to be the CEO from a very early start in their career. Great. Some people have got super confidence and they're prepared to move forward on that basis. Do they make it? Some do, some don't. I think the whole way forward through your career is about choices, and you make choices in life and you make choices in your career. And I think the first choice is stick or twist. I like to call it stick or twist. Do you stay with the same company and work your way through the organization, or do you move to other companies? Okay. And you have to have clear rationale as to why you're going to move. So is it to sort of understand, is it for a promotion? Fine. Is it because they want you to do the same job and they're just going to pay you a load more money? It's tempting. I've been there myself and I've moved on that basis, but the satisfaction's not great, because after a while you think, well, actually, I'm doing the same job. I wish I hadn't done that, but I know I'm on a lot more money, but that satisfies my domestic life. It doesn't satisfy my business career. I think you've got to look at who you're joining. I think you've got to think about the reputation of that company. Do they deliver the product that they deliver well? What's their reputation amongst customers? Is it a place that you can see yourself working in and feel comfortable in? And again, that comes back to principles probably. It's like, does it compromise my principles or my values to join that company? Is that right? Can I do that? Because that will stick with you, because your perception or people's perception of you will change depending on the company that you're working for. And I guess ultimately it talks about, how does it fit into your career plan? Does it actually give you that sort of rounded knowledge that enables you to get to a more senior position in the future or not? So I think it's important to understand how it fits in on career development plans. I know sometimes career development plans, it's like, well, do they really work? I think it's important. My son, my youngest son, has a career development plan, and he works it very well. He fully understands what he wants to get out of his next role, and he knows the roles that he needs to go to create that rounded position. I guess the other thing you've got to look for in your career is high-level sponsorship. You're not going to make it. I don't think you're not going to make it unless somebody's helping you. Select somebody to help you along the way. There are people who will do that. I like to think I've helped people on the way. And I've had people who have definitely helped me and projected me within an organization, which is super important. And then I've already talked about principles. It's making sure that you stick to your principles as you move through your career.
Thanks, Jeff. Just on the idea of sponsorship, I think there's a lot of research that shows that men are far more likely to ask for help and sponsorship than women. And actually, if you ask people, they want to help.
Yeah.
And I think, the CEO is not always an external candidate. It could be an internal one. So you look at E.ON, Alexon, they both just hired an internal candidate, haven't they?
Yes, agreed.
So, you need to position yourself also as someone that is ready to step up. And it's that upward management piece and letting key stakeholders at some point let them know that you want to be a CEO. Jeff,
Yes.
is it fair to say you weren't shy in telling your bosses you wanted their role?
Yeah, do you know what? Yes and no. Yes and no. I think people have always seen me as being highly ambitious. And yet, if I looked inside myself, I'm like, no, I'm just really working hard because I want to do a good job. And actually, it comes back to that imposter syndrome. It sort of says, I'm overworking here because I'm not sure I'm good enough. That's me internally, by the way. So yes, I would always come across, it's probably because I'm a good act in that respect. I don't know whether that's the right thing I should be saying on this call, but everybody has that doubt. And yeah, I was ambitious. I am ambitious still. I still believe I can do sort of big roles. But I've delivered for the person I work for. I've been very, very loyal at times for people I've worked for. And the one thing I've found difficult is when my boss has moved on, I've sometimes found it difficult to transition to somebody else because that loyalty is deep in me. Again, it comes back to team and what drives me. So, yes and no.
Okay. I think they would know from your ambition that you would have wanted MD CEO roles.
Yeah.
And most people, though, wouldn't know that you suffer from imposter syndrome because you come across externally as quite confident. And actually, I think if you do want to get an MD CEO role, as you said, it is an act.
Yes.
You kind of almost have to fake, and that's part of that preparation. But you also need to make sure that you are going into interviews and interactions and you're acting as of equal business stature rather than it being at different levels. Yes.
Some people develop lower voices, don't they? It's like, yes, of course. Absolutely right. And it's that sort of, that's just an example, but you need to control that imposter syndrome. You need to be a good act. When you're standing up in front of 500 people or doing a media interview on television, you have to control that, really control it, and be the leader that you are, basically.
Yeah. Did you have any training for media?
Yeah, so I had media training when I was at Orsted. I did a live down the wire interview on Sky for when I was at Inenco. Inenco is very good at positioning people from a PR perspective. And I've done various sort of bits and bobs on TV on sort of stuff around net zero and stuff like that. I sort of like it and I don't like it. I sort of wonder when I get in front of the camera, why the hell am I there? And then I just grit my teeth and get through it. But actually afterwards, I quite like that sort of thing.
Yeah. We covered quite a lot of different points there, which I'm pleased that we did. But I think the top three choices, which I like how you've done that, is stick or twist. And, do you stay or do you move? And I think there are pros and cons for both. And I think you need to know your end game.
Yep.
Where do you want to go? But I think, breadth on a CV is helpful to get a CEO role, and that could be internal moves that get you that breadth. Yeah. Reputation of who you're joining, because making the wrong move could do significant harm to future roles and in how it looks. And then in terms of whatever you do decide to do, how does this fit into my overall career plan? And I genuinely don't think that you should do things for money because that can harm that upward career trajectory.
Yep. Money is a consequence of success, and actually if you're satisfied domestically, you need to be able to pay the bills, of course. Then, for me, it was satisfying that, but actually driving for the right positions and the jobs that I wanted.
Yeah. You also, Jeff, to get the CEO role, you've got to be good. You need to have delivered something. There needs to be a track record of tangible evidence of growing businesses, positive transformation. Yes. It's not, just a CV of just average steady state stuff.
It is absolutely.
Good. Sorry.
Go.
Next question. So, interview preparation.
Yes.
I've not met anyone, Jeff, that would prepare as well as you would for an interview. So, can you talk me through your kind of approach and what that would entail when you're preparing for an interview, please?
Okay, so I go the whole 9 yards on a preparation. Clearly you go through the company's website, but I actually research every page of that website. I look for any sort of strategy documents on the web. I look through LinkedIn to see who works there, what the job functions are that they've got. I do sort of read stuff all the time in the press. And what I try and then do is to triangulate that information to try and understand the strategy of the business, the risks and issues that they face. I also try and get myself into a space where I can imagine myself running the business and what that might look like on a daily basis. It probably takes me at least, and I mean full days, probably 2 to 3 full days to go through a full extensive process. Obviously, when I've been sort of put forward by you, Lee, you provide a sort of an evidence pack or a pack that helps with that preparation. So a candidate pack that I read.
Do other recruiters do that, Jeff? Just out of interest?
Some do, but to a less extent, I would say, Lee.
Oh, I thought that might be the case.
Yeah.
Have that validated.
Now the other way, by the way. So, so preparation. When I went to Orsted, first interview, I remember quite well. The guy who was interviewing me wasn't the exec director who eventually interviewed me. He basically said, Jeff, he said, you've just described our strategy. And I thought, well, then it's worked. I talked to loads of people in the industry. I talked to a friend who gave me some real insight behind the scenes in Orsted. I knew pretty much everything that was going on. This is 2014. I was talking about flotations, and I was talking about which didn't happen until 2016, and how a portfolio of wind assets would look in a flotation with shareholders who are interested in short-term returns, etc., with a long-term asset. That blew the exec director away, I remember. So yeah, absolutely. But there is a risk around preparation. You can be over-prepared. So you need to leave an element of room to be able to respond to sort of questions in a much more sort of from the hip, shooting from the hip sort of way. You've got to go into the interview with a level of adrenaline. It's no good being over prepared, because what happens is I've gone into interviews myself and I thought I can answer any question you ask me, and then I come out of the interview and I think I missed that point, I missed that point, and I missed that point. It's because I'm over prepared. I've rehearsed it in my own mind too many times. So leave a little gap and leave yourself a little bit of uncertainty if you can. And I'm not saying there's a methodology there. You just need to figure it out on a dial and make sure that you end up in the right place. I think the other thing for me, beyond preparation, and Lee, I think I've mentioned this to you before, is make a list of questions that you find difficult to answer. So and I can give an example. My 2 sons and my daughter, they're sort of at work now, and I've told them to keep a log of questions that they get asked in interviews. An interview book, and keep a log of those. So, and also revisit that question that you didn't answer very well, and write down the answer in the book. And that book serves 2 purposes. 1, it prepares you for future interviews, and 2, it provides you with a list of questions to ask people that you interview in the future. So it is a really valuable exercise. And both my sons and my daughter have gone through that same process, and I help them with that preparation process and challenge them and ask them all the questions that I can, because there's only, say, 10 questions in an interview anyway that you can ask. They just come in different forms, don't they? You just need to spot the strengths and weaknesses question, the sort of tell me about a time when, etc. They're pretty much all the same. You just need to be ready.
And you get better as you go along, don't you, during an interview process? And that interview book that you keep, the same questions, I imagine, come up quite often. In just a different variation. You just need to understand what they're asking for on the variation, but they'll ask it just slightly differently. Yeah. So I think a lot of people will be quite surprised how much preparation you do, but that's made the difference to you getting the #1 role, because it's very competitive. Because for some of these roles, there could be, from a headhunter's perspective, we could be calling up to 100+ people plus an advertised search. You've got to be the best and go above and beyond.
I think when I joined British Gas, I think there were 112 people applied for the job. I think a similar number for Orsted. So how do you make it through that exercise and get to number one? It's not easy. And yet the Orsted job, when you talked to me about it, I was like, oh yeah, that is a job that I would like to do. You know, so I immediately saw that was my opportunity.
So has there ever been a question that really stumped you?
Yeah, there is. So I interviewed, and I don't know why I did it, but I was interviewing for a job in Yorkshire Water, up in Bradford or wherever I went. And the CEO is interviewing me actually, and he asked me a question which was basically, nobody has ever done anything in their career without being deep fried. When were you deep fried? And honestly, I wanted to do a Nigel Farage and go, that's a great question. Can I have the next question, please? And he just do that. And I was stumped, and I had to say, can I come back to that? And actually, while I'm answering a question, and I think this is one of my own personal skills, while I was answering the question, my brain was running forward to try and figure out how the hell I was going to answer that.
Yeah.
But clearly you're looking for an answer that basically said, I got deep fried in this situation, but actually it turned out to be a positive result in the end. To be honest with you, I gave a really poor answer. I think it was like, yeah, well, you know, I've done lots of things and I've been in difficult situations, but it's been okay. But I think that's a really killer question.
Yeah. You know, I don't think there's anything wrong, perhaps 24 hours later, saying, I could have given you a better answer. I was deep fried in this situation. This was the outcome. Yeah. I don't see anything wrong with that, because it is, when you're on the spot, hard to think on your feet, isn't it?
It is really, really tough, I have to say. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Kirsty, we're coming to the end, aren't we? Should we talk about the next show?
We are. In a second, I'm going to kind of summarize up what we've done, and Jeff is going to give us his top tip. So if you're looking to really move towards something like that, Jeff's going to give us our top tip. But yes, next week we have, I believe it's Tom Mallins on the...
Mallins, correct. So Tom is a managing director of Sandler, who are a world leader in sales leadership and training. And the topic is why energy salespeople fail and what to do about it. And it's aimed at CEOs of energy businesses.
That is going to be a good one. I'm very excited about that. You know how I feel about sales. Very excited.
Nothing happens in business without sales, Kirsty.
Very truly. Very true. Yeah. Okay, so in a second, Jeff, I'm going to come to you and ask for your top tip. But before then, I mean, you clearly have a wealth of knowledge. You've given so much in kind of half an hour. I'm going to try and summarize it in the next kind of 3 minutes, and I wonder how well I'll do. So to begin with, I feel like you spoke a lot about personal qualities of somebody, and it really came clear to me that it kind of split into two things. You need to have personal principles and integrity, not only about you and the role that you're going to play and the jobs that you're going to work for and the leader that you're going to become, but also for what you want for yourself, what kind of career that you want, what you want moving forward. And you need to understand that about yourself in order to push forward. You also mentioned lots of times team. So not only being part of a team and working well with them, but leading them and being a true leader, employing people who are better than you at some things and listening to them and letting them make decisions, because that's how you get progression, in not only for yourself, but also for the company. You gave 3 choices, which I liked, whether you're moving forward. One is to stick or twist. There's stay at the same company you're at and go through, which has its benefits, or move, which also has its benefits. The one big caution that you said about this was not to just chase money, chase role, chase responsibility, chase, is this in my game plan, which you mentioned later. You also want to do your due diligence about the company that you're going to be joining. If you do twist, as it were, does this match your principles? Is this a company that you'll feel proud working for? Is there a lot of opportunity for you in this company, or is it sort of more of a dead end? Are you just chasing for money? Yeah. And then finally, does this fit in your career? Does this take you where you want to be? And some people come in and they want to be a CEO, and that's the way they're going to always be. Some people just think about the next step. No matter what you're doing, does this match that? And then you very, very, very gave a lot of information about the preparation that you gave. And that was really clear for somebody who's got the level of knowledge that you've got. There were 2 forms of preparation. One was for the role that you were going for, made sure you researched every page on their website. So hunt out the strategy, go on LinkedIn, find out if there are common links, what they're publishing there, what kind of things they're celebrating, that kind of stuff. And the press going and triangulating how you would run the company and what kind of things you would do if you were already there. But also there is a kind of a longer term preparation, and you clearly have a passion for the industry that you're in, and you read around it the whole time, not just during preparation for interviews. So I feel like there's a preparation element that's acute for the role that you're in, but also you need to kind of live and breathe the industry that you're in order to be successul.
Yes.
How did I do?
Great summary.
Did I say all that in half an hour?
You did. It was excellent. I've got so many notes, I didn't even get to say everything. I feel like the passion is really the biggest thing that came across from what you said.
Okay. Yes. And you know, you wanted my top tip is, I think you've encompassed it quite well, actually, Kirsty, is enthusiasm and passion for what you do. That for me, and that leads to the preparation, that leads for the due diligence. Never enter an interview process where you're not going to put in the full 9 yards. There's no point. You have to represent yourself in the best possible way. And if you're going to take on that responsibility to do that, you have to do the job on it. Passion, enthusiasm, and I have to say my passion is this wonderful energy industry that is going through difficult times, you know, net zero prices, etc. You know, it is a great industry. I'm proud to work in it. I'm proud to have done the things that I've done, and I think there's many more chapters to go yet. So passion and motivation and all of those things, but having fun as well, and that's important, because you've got to have a laugh in life. It's no good sitting there sort of poker faced all day every day. Having some fun and some giggles along the way is a good way to run the business.
100%. Before we wrap up, Jeff, would you like to just tell us a bit about your current company, and if people want to reach out, how they should do so? Yeah,
so my career has entered a different phase. I've got a portfolio of roles that I do now. And one of them is I work as CEO for a company called Sitigrid, where we have developed a supply exemption proposition, where we're using existing BSC rules and a technology platform to realize extra value for small generators and small customers. And we're actively out sort of promoting that proposition amongst B2B suppliers. It's a B2B proposition which fits with my with a lot of my background in the energy industry. You know, it's available, and we can push that proposition quite quickly to start. You know, it's ready to go basically, and it's not difficult to adopt. And you know, I'm sure there'll be a number of people on this call that I've had contact with, because I've used my extensive industry network to position this proposition with others. So if you want to talk to me about that, please reach out on LinkedIn, or you know, if you want to ask me any questions of anything that I've said today, also please sort of reach out through LinkedIn, and I'm more than happy to respond.
Brilliant. Jeff, thanks so much for coming on the show and giving us your insightful tips. Kirsty, thanks for beautifully emceeing as always. And thank you to our viewers for listening or watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.